You are listening to Fox Radio 910 and 104.3. I want to welcome you to Let's Talk About, our weekly radio program sponsored by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Linda Balentine, the president of Crowning Touch and your host for this series. I interview local characters, service providers, politicians, teachers, entrepreneurs, and business professionals, and each one is dedicated to improving life in our valley. Every person has an interesting perspective to share from all walks of life. So, let's begin today's interview. You're listening to Let's Talk About, and today we're joined by a familiar voice in Virginia politics, Congressman Ben Cline, who represents the 6th District of Virginia in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Cline has served in Washington since 2019, and before that, he was a longtime member of the Virginia House of Delegates. With a background in law, a reputation for being a strong constitutional conservative, and a deep commitment to the communities of the Shenandoah Valley, Roanoke, and beyond, he brings a grounded perspective to some of the most pressing issues facing both our region and the nation. So we're going to talk about jobs, infrastructure, education, national security, fiscal responsibility, and what it really takes to get things done in Capitol Hill. Congressman Cline, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And I know, even as we sit here and we were talking, it is a sacrifice for your family to have you serve, for any member of Congress to serve. It is a big sacrifice.
It is. And every job has sacrifices. This one, no different. I have young children, 13-year-old twin daughters, so I joke that I go to Washington for the peace and quiet, but I do miss the family, and so it's great to be back in the 6th District to get to spend time with constituents, but also with the family.
Yeah, so it's nice. We love seeing you around. Make sure you're still kicking, doing what you should be doing. What motivated you to get into public service and run for Congress in the first place?
Well, public service has always been an important part of life, family life. I grew up in Lexington. It's my hometown, Rockbridge County, and giving back was always part of the way we were raised. So whether it was volunteering in the community or, giving back through elected work, I've been trying to give back to my home community for many, many years, in the State House first and then in Congress starting in 2019. How
did your experience in the Virginia House of Delegates influence your work in Washington? And that was a good precursor for sure.
Oh, yeah. It was great training. My mentor in the State House, Morgan Griffith, sat right behind me and taught me well, because now that I'm in Congress, he's still teaching me a lot of things. But, Rob Whitman was in the State House, but, so were several on the Democrat side as well. So the State House does give you great training, not just in how to pass legislation, but also in how to work together to find those common interests, not to compromise your principles, but to instead search out and find those areas where you can work together, and when you can, do work together for the betterment either of the Commonwealth or of the country.
And that's a real art of being a politician, to have an open mind, to be able to converse with somebody on the other side of the fence and not fight about it, but try and always find the common ground, because we don't move forward without the common ground.
Well, the story I tell, the State House, all 100 of us sit together when we have our sessions. They start at noon every day, lunchtime. And so there is a room in the back where there's food, but it's only one room. And we all go in there, and it's small. So regardless of party, you're kind of jumbled together with people from both parties, getting lunch and talking to each other, not about legislation, but about your families and your communities and what challenges you're facing and what's going on in your life. So that when you're in a committee and you're looking across the dais at each other, you're actually, that person well.
Yeah.
Now in Washington, in the back of the House chamber, there are 2 different cloakrooms. There's a Democrat cloakroom and a Republican cloakroom, and you can get a sandwich in either one, but you don't go into the other party's cloakroom. So it's separate. And then when you go into your committees, there are separate lounges for Republicans and Democrats in each committee. So when you come out to do your work, you're battling, you don't know the people you're working with, and you don't break bread with them. So there's that structural division that is a problem in Washington that it contributes to the division.
It didn't used to be that way, because people used to actually live on Capitol Hill. In other words, they had a second home there, don't they? But now it's a lot easier and quicker to travel.
Before airplanes and trains and things like. It took a long time to get to Washington, so folks would bring their family, and now I'm home every weekend. I get to see my kids. They love Roanoke, where they go to school. and my wife is from here as well. So we're happy that we're in modern times where, yes, we don't get to see our colleagues as much as they used to, but I get to see my family more.
I know. So that part's very good. What is a typical day like for you when Congress is in session? I mean, where are you living?
So contributing
you
to
sleep
that
in your office?
effort, no. Morgan Griffith does. I worked in Washington for Bob Goodlatte when I was younger as a staffer, and so I know how big the rats can get in Washington and how they've infested the office building. So there's no way I'm sleeping in my office building. But I do share a group house with about a dozen congressmen about a block from the Capitol, and it is, I joke that it is very much Animal House for political nerds, but we mainly argue not over legislation, but over whose dishes are dirty and whose laundry is still in there and what the channel is on the TV, whether it's MSNBC or CNN or Fox News. And I always try and put it on Fox, but
you're a good boy.
We have good, we work everything out. We have great relationships on both sides of the aisle. So there's 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats in the house I live in. And it's affiliated with the National Prayer Breakfast. So the one thing that unites us all is a love of God and a love of country. Okay,
so that sounds like a real supportive environment.
It is.
Let's talk about some of your committee assignments, okay? Mm-hmm. And I understand that now you are the first vice chairman of the Republican Study Committee, the RSC.
Correct.
And but you've also got other committee assignments that you have. How does that get decided for people that don't understand the intricacies of that?
Right. Well, when you first get elected, you let your leadership know your preferences and where your interests lie and where you think you can be the most effective in contributing to the work of Congress. So when I got to Congress, I wanted to be on the Judiciary Committee because I'm an attorney and that's kind of where I'm interested. And I was put on the Judiciary Committee. I was also put on the Education Workforce Committee, but realizing that spending and fiscal responsibility is our biggest challenge facing our country, I moved from the Education and Workforce Committee to the Appropriations Committee. So those two are a lot. Appropriations has tasked me, because they have 4 seats on the Budget Committee, to be one of those members of the Budget Committee, which is only important when you do reconciliation. So for the first 4 years, it was pretty sleepy. But this year we have done reconciliation. So now we're doing reconciliation, the one big, beautiful bill, and that comes out of the Budget Committee. And so that's been quite the weighty issue. And then because I can't say no, when the Speaker asked me this year to serve on the Intelligence Committee, I agreed to do that because I am a strong defender of our civil liberties. And as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I felt that we needed a voice, a legal voice for the civil rights and civil liberties of the people on that committee.
So you've got plenty to keep. How do they even juggle the times? One committee pays attention to when another committee is meeting. Do you run from one to the other?
I have run. I don't like to run from committee to committee, but when they're both voting, I will remember my track upbringing from high school and take off.
Wow. What are some of the biggest challenges currently facing the 6th district that you're trying to ameliorate as you're, representing us there?
Well, I'm blessed to live in the best district in the country. It's not only got the best people, it's the most beautiful, and it's got such economic diversity. I mean, agriculture is the driving base of our district. So supporting our farmers, making sure that the Farm Bill gets renewed, making sure it helps small farmers and not just big ag, which I didn't really know much about big ag until I got to Congress, and then I got introduced to California and the farms out west, which are, instead of just tens or hundreds of acres, are thousands and tens of thousands of acres. And big ag has its unique challenges, but small ag is vanishing, and we really have to do more to support our small farmers. So making sure that that's part of the Farm Bill has been a priority. I'm on the Appropriations Subcommittee on Ag, so I can get a lot done through that bill, which goes through every year, and working with Brooke Rollins, who's the new Secretary of Agriculture, to make sure that the policies coming out of the department reflect small farmers that we have here in the Valley. That is critical. Now, again, manufacturing, we want to bring back to America. That's what Donald Trump is highlighting. That's what I'm supporting. So expanding manufacturing here, creating more jobs, and not just jobs that help you cobble together a couple of jobs to get by. We want good jobs with good pay, strong benefits, jobs that will keep you employed so that you can raise a family and be part of your community and give back to your community over the decades.
Mike Rowe is worried, saying that everybody that we need in manufacturing is in the 8th grade. In other words, he sees a real shortfall. Do you see that as a potential problem? And I just heard the other day, I think it was Senator Johnson, just mentioned that 20% of the working male population in the United States is currently unemployed. So that's a big one.
I'm terrified at that
statistic. That's a big one.
And but the people here in the 6th District value work. The unemployment rate in much of the Shenandoah Valley, and the Roanoke Valley is slightly higher because it's more urban, but the Shenandoah Valley, it's very low. It's around 2.5%, 3% because we value work and we recognize the importance of work. And that's why it boggles my mind when I say for SNAP benefits, for food stamps, for Medicaid, for health insurance, that we're going to ask you for a work requirement, that somehow is unthinkable for liberals and the left. And they say, how dare you put in place work requirements for these programs? Well, if you're able-bodied and you can work.
And less than 64 years old or something like that.
Less than 64. And we're only asking 40 hours a month.
I know, it's nothing.
So 10 hours a week, not 40 hours a week. You should be able to make that work.
Well, and people have been separated from their sense of their own personal dignity, and they've forgotten how important the work ethic is to make you feel good about yourself. Depression and big pharma, with all of their chemicals to treat depression, are not helping as much as 10 hours or 20 hours a week.
No, we need to lift up folks who work hard. It doesn't. If you're working in the trades and you're working hard, God bless you. We need to lift you up. We need more people in the trades.
We sure do, because soon a plumber is going to be making more than you can make as a lawyer.
They already do. They already do. And so those are jobs that are vanishing as well. And so supporting the trades, supporting education in the trades, our community colleges do a great job here locally. And those are primarily state responsibilities, but the federal government can provide assistance and the student loans, which unfortunately got hijacked by Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren back 10 years ago with Dodd-Frank, where they took over the student loan programs and now are sending the message to higher ed that it's okay to charge whatever you want for tuition because we'll lend you whatever you need.
I know.
And for students who leave higher education with a degree in art or dance or, and those may be great, but you better go in knowing what you're going to earn coming out because to pay back those loans, you're going to need to make a lot more.
I know it's let's just focus on, can we focus on our national debt for a minute?
Sure.
Since it's all related to this whole,
it is.
The school fees and everything else. I just heard last night that we are spending $1 trillion. We are borrowing $1 trillion per quarter. It's not included in our budget, in our fixed budget. And as a matter of fact, apparently, from what I understand, there are a whole bunch of, I know that you're on appropriations and I know you appropriate money, but there is discretionary money that somehow has slid in under the door and become things that you all never review anymore. It's become mandatory funding, so that, now we have another $1 trillion that has slipped away that you guys are not even looking at or making it part of, will be nice if we can have a chance to review that. But it's a very scary place we're going right now. And
it's infuriating that we don't look at why we are spending as much as we are on the programs that we already have authorized. I'm a fan of something called zero-based budgeting, where you don't start from last year's level and just bump it up for inflation. You actually bring in the people who run this program and say, okay, from your first dollar, tell me,
Exactly.
justify for me why you should get $1 of the taxpayers' money and then build up from there. How much is your office space? How are you utilizing it? What are how much are you spending on individual salaries? How much are you spending on, and build up from there to the point where we can figure out what your budget should be. That's what DOGE is trying to do. And one of the problems has been is that the executive branch agencies were refusing to give us any information, especially under Biden. You had, especially USAID, was one of the worst.
It was one of the worst.
When the Foreign Affairs Committee would try and subpoena documents, they would ignore them. And that's putting it politely. And so for DOJ to come in and say, our foreign aid programs are broken, we're giving money to our enemies.
Well, we've lost sight of where the money was going.
Absolutely.
We had no idea anymore, and people weren't even reviewing it.
And the transgendered comic books in Peru and millions of dollars for ridiculousness.
Crazy stuff.
Is exactly why we need to return to basics when it comes to budgeting. And I think we are on the way to doing that. It's a messy process to change the way that you do things.
Well, the pandemic really threw us off, okay? Because that's when we started to accrue the trillions of dollars that we had to either borrow or print money for.
Well, it's when it went off the cliff.
It went off the cliff. But why in the world, since we are all back up and running now, why do we have to continue to borrow and spend at those levels? Why can't we get it back to where we were? For instance, if you were going to have heart surgery and had to borrow $150,000 and the heart surgery was done, you don't borrow that every year ongoing,
right? Because
the surgery is done.
Right.
So what I don't understand is why we can't get back to pre-pandemic levels of spending, at least get back to that.
Yeah, pre-COVID levels of spending. It's only 5 years ago. And the $3 trillion that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden pushed through for all of the COVID era spending, the Build Back Better and all of that Green New Deal money has been largely spent. We tried to claw back as much as we could when we took control, but now that we need to return to pre-COVID spending, and that will help us go a long way toward restoring fiscal responsibility.
Hand in hand with that, then, is immigration reform.
Absolutely,
because that's critical. We can't be putting all of these people up with our veterans homeless and spending all this money on, 5-star hotel rooms for immigrants. It just doesn't fit. And I mean, I know that's an exaggeration in some regards, but the fact is, it's still a problem. How do you see that?
Well, it's infuriating. I mean, it is one of the biggest issues that people talk to me about, to watch the flouting of our laws along the southern border during the Biden administration, which was complicit in the 10 million people who have come across the border. It's more than the Commonwealth of Virginia has 8 million. And so you have essentially a state as large as Virginia coming across the border. And they are moving these illegals into communities across the country. And so it's putting pressure on housing, it's putting pressure on schools, it's putting pressure on transit,
healthcare,
putting pressure on healthcare.
Terrible.
We visited the border and went to an OB-GYN, a NICU unit where in the hospital where all the beds were filled with illegals, and so the citizens of the community had to go hours away to Phoenix to go if they were having a premature baby. And the reason it was filled was because the mothers coming up
the anchor babies were in those places.
They were impregnated along the way because, first of all, those trips are
months
dangerous.
Long. Yeah, they are.
And so these women were assaulted and were impregnated and had no prenatal care. And so they were giving birth prematurely.
Oh, no.
And so taking up the space in the NICU.
Oh, no.
And so it's tragic for all involved. And that's why sealing the border was the first major victory for the Trump administration, and will be one of his lasting accomplishments. I mean, with a 95% reduction in illegal crossings,
which was a beautiful thing.
It was so great. And so now, step 2, remove those who are here illegally. That is proving to be a challenge because of the judicial intervention in this process.
Why in the world anybody would want to get in the way of us sending, criminals back home is beyond me. So that has to do with just criminal justice reform, which also touches on this. You really picked yourself a good time to be a congressman.
It's a challenging time. And whoever said, may you live in interesting times, I'd like to have a word. But it is interesting times, that's for sure. But with criminal justice, we do have to make sure that we uphold the rule of law. yes, due process is important and applies to everybody. But what my friends on the left don't understand is that the courts have established, we have established by statute, and the courts have established that due process rights are different for different groups of people, and that if you're
not
here
a citizen,
illegally, you don't get the same due process rights as a citizen of the United States. You don't get a free attorney. You don't get a hearing before a judge. You don't get an automatic consideration for bond. You don't get. So if you're here illegally and you're within 100 miles of the border, you're returned.
That's right. That's the due process.
Right.
That's it. That's all they deserve.
Right.
What are some of your thoughts on these recent Supreme Court decisions that might be affecting your constituents? I mean, we've touched on some of them here.
For the most part, the Supreme Court has impressed me with its return to originalism, its embrace of the founders' intent. And so you see with the overturning of Roe, with the recognition that the Second Amendment provides for an individual right, recognizes an individual right to keep and bear arms. And we are continuing to see that when it comes to executive branch overreach, that the Chevron, the overturning of Chevron, which essentially says you don't give deference to the regulatory mega state when judging regulations, you should actually judge them on the statute that Congress passed instead. And that helps restore some power to Congress, which is what we all want, because it restores power to the elected and the voters themselves.
It's interesting to see the way that the federal judges are getting in the way. A lot of that stuff will track right on up to the Supreme Court in order to have them settle it all, correct? I mean, it's all got to go there, because otherwise the judges are determining what the president can and can't do. And I don't think that it should be that way.
Joe Biden successfully appointed more judges to the federal bench than Trump did. And we're seeing that in many of these federal judges who are interfering, not just making decisions that are questions of constitutional law, but instead are making policy decisions and imposing their own policy wants onto the cases before them. And the fact that we have these district court judges who are making decisions and then granting federal national injunctions that essentially bind the whole state to a single district judge somewhere in the country. I mean, other district judges under current policy, under current procedure, other district judges in that district don't have to follow the district judge's rulings. But apparently, if you grant an injunction nationally, everybody across the country has to. So I think they're overstepping. We're passing legislation to try and clarify that a procedure for when a federal judge wants to take something nationally, they have to. It's a question for the Supreme Court.
How many federal judges are there? Do you have any idea? And what kind of hole is there? How many? Is there another chance for Trump to take advantage of the ones that need to be replaced now? I mean, are they resigning on a regular basis? How does that work?
There is a cycling through of the bench on a regular basis. And so, yes, Trump will have the opportunity to nominate and have approved hundreds of federal judges. And as long as we keep control of the Senate, it's likely that those nominees will be approved for 99% of them. But, that's why it is important that we continue to deliver for the American people during the next year and a half and make sure that the voters are informed about what is in, for example, this great, big, beautiful bill that we're considering right now that we passed through the House, that we are trying to pass through the Senate. And so that we tell folks this is, why you don't have to pay taxes on tips, why you don't have to pay taxes on overtime, why seniors are getting a bigger deduction, why the tax provisions of Trump didn't expire, and why small businesses can be more successful and investing. That it's because of these policies that this Congress is putting in place. And so we anticipate that that Republicans will be able to hold the House and hold the Senate and continue to deliver for the American people.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope that that's the case, because 2 years is not enough time to get done what we need to get done. As a matter of fact, I don't even think 4 years is enough time. I think we need to go ahead and aim higher.
Well, that's why the president is moving so quickly.
Finally, what message would you most like to share with your constituents today? We have barely touched on everything that I wanted to talk to you about today. We could make a lot longer session out of this, but you want to say something to them in particular.
Oh, I'm so grateful.
This is your chance.
I'm so grateful to represent the citizens of the 6th Congressional District. As I said, the people here are the people I grew up with, the people who taught me as teachers, the people who looked after me as scoutmasters and as doctors and dentists, and my friends from school who are still here, my professors. So this is my home, and I love it more than any place on earth. It's the place I want to continue to give back to and continue to stand up for and fight for in Washington. So please continue to reach out to me here. And I have offices in Roanoke and Stanton and Harrisonburg and Winchester, but continue to reach out to me, because whether it's cutting through red tape, which is more than half of what I do, is just the constituent casework here in these offices, to the fight that I take to Washington on your behalf each and every day. It is the honor of my life, and I will continue to fight for the people of the 6th District of Virginia. Well,
you've got the enthusiasm. I might mention what Alan Dershowitz likes to say and think about. First thing he wakes up every morning, the first thing he does, he repeats a Jewish prayer, and he thanks the Lord for reviving him every morning. Amen. When he gets up. Amen. So I think that's probably a lot of what you do. Well, that wraps up our conversation today. And I just want to tell you that we really appreciate that you took the time to share your thoughts and insights and updates. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Let's Talk About, courtesy of Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia, the only moving company with a consignment shop, auction house, and real estate division. We are a one-stop shop for any senior making a move. Check out our website at crowningtouchusa.com. Or if you are planning a move, call Anna at 540-982-5800 to arrange a free estimate. And don't forget to check out our monthly browse and bid auctions at 6712 Williamson Road in Roanoke, where you can bid online on over 1,800 items each month. Meanwhile, let's get back together next Friday at noon for more of Let's Talk About on Fox 910 and 104.3.